Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May, and you know she comes with a lot of titles, but she is here tonight to talk to us about discipline. But before we do that, let's introduce Dr. Angela Celeste May. She is our clinical, our organizational, and our forensically trained psychologist. She is the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates Incorporated. She is the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated, past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board, the Metro Detroit Association of Black Psychologists. She is also an author, a musician, and a trustee of the Michigan Health Council. And she is here tonight to talk to us about discipline. Good evening, Dr. Angie. How are you?
I am doing very well. Good evening, Kim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show. I'm so
Hey.
excited. Anytime I get to talk to you, it's always a wonderful thing.
Oh, thank you.
So let's get right to it. So our topic is discipline. I've been having all these conversations with different people about discipline in terms of how do we protect our mental well-being? How do we protect our physical health, by being disciplined about what you eat, how much you exercise, making sure that you exercise when you don't feel like it. But I started to have some interesting thoughts. What is discipline and why is it important for us, Dr. Angie?
Okay, excellent question. Good starting place. Okay, so discipline, basically you could think of it as it is a way of training people, ourselves or others, to follow or quote unquote obey, formal dictionary says to follow or obey a certain set of rules or regulations or a format for doing something. So part of my background is that I'm a professional musician, of course, and any of you all who are in the arts or around the arts, not that it's just for the arts, it's across the board, lots of things in life, but I think of the arts because not only for my own growing up and taking violin lessons and flute lessons and then later voice and all of the music lessons and everything, but also having taught it as well, that I teach music. It's such an excellent mechanism for teaching our kids discipline. So even if you don't, for parents out there and family members, etc., even if your child doesn't go into that particular artistry as a profession, it's still an excellent training ground, taking music or dance or draw, any of the arts, because they require practice. That's part and parcel of doing the thing. It takes practice to get ready for your lesson, for performances, or to show your work. So the whole idea of the discipline of having to practice something is excellent for kids because it teaches them to focus for periods of time. For the little younger ones, you can start piano lessons for kids. I remember my mom was a wonderful piano teacher and worked with so many kids. She's had kids, as young as 3 and 4 years old, starting early. And of course, we don't expect them to be able to concentrate and have the discipline to concentrate for an hour lesson, but they may have little short time frames that fit what they're able to do. And then as they grow, as their brains develop and their ability to concentrate gets longer and longer, the lessons can grow to like 30-minute lesson, then 45 or maybe hour lesson over time. But just that whole practice of training kids that I have a certain time in which to do something and I have to work on it in a certain way. You keep reinforcing. That's part of discipline. You reinforce, how do you sit at the instrument, or how do you hold the instrument? How do you breathe if it's singing lessons? All of those things teach kids. That helps with their concentration. It literally helps with brain development. So it literally helps with brain development. And this is for any age. So your listeners, those watching, we all know the word cell, right? CELL. The cells in our bodies make up our bodies, right? We have skin cells, hair cells. So in our brains, we have cells that are called neurons. So those are our cells that are specifically for our central nervous system. So in our brains, we actually gain, without going into a lot of detail, we literally gain more connections in our brains. We develop more, they call them neural connections, the more we learn. So, and that's at any age. So discipline, that training that we do with ourselves and others of certain things you do each day or each week, it helps our brains develop. It helps our ability to concentrate. It helps our memories, strengthens memory. It just does a lot. There's a lot of benefits for something that may feel sometimes like a straitjacket, like I have to do it. But in reality, following those steps little by little over time helps to actually instill a certain sense of control over your time, your instrument, your dance, whatever it may be. And that is true for, any aspect of life.
That is fascinating, Dr. Angie, because you mentioned about brain development, and I'm fascinated by that because one of the things that I thought about, oftentimes, and I always use this example, the family member who stole your truck back in 1973, and every time you see him, you're like, "You stole my red truck. I didn't know it was your red truck. Well,
Right.
I'm still angry about it." So, when we're out in public, especially now, since, and I struggle with, do we say post COVID or not? Because COVID is still hanging around. But it's post our confinement. Now everyone's back out and we're interacting with each other again, almost at quote unquote normal levels. And there is a lot of anger. A lot of people just either cut people off driving, cursing people out in public. People are very negative in their interactions. Can you talk about how, because I think you're hitting on something that's very important in terms of brain development, how does that help us in our interactions in terms of discipline with others and how we portray ourselves to the outside world?
That's an excellent question and a very complicated question. I love you ask these multi-layered questions we can get into. Excellent. Well, there are actually specific centers of the brain that deal with impulse control, which is part of what you're describing.
Hmm.
We know that it deals, there are parts of the brain and our hormones also deal with anxiety, depression, some of those emotions that you talked about. A lot of times, depression can masquerade or come out as anger and anxiety and other emotions, or just plain anger, come out as just plain
Hmm.
anger, like you described
Hmm.
it. So there are things that we can do in terms of discipline that can be helpful for ourselves and others, to, as they say, lower the temperature with some of those negative emotional reactions. So first, I want to just preface it by saying that, as with anything, when we're talking about humanity and behavior and thinking, there are always exceptions. There are always, unique, specific circumstances for which additional help may be needed, whether it's in a, therapeutic, of course, or medication. There could be other things going on that can contribute to some of those more volatile reactions, shall we say. But having said that, generally speaking, in many circumstances, that self-discipline can help a lot with those things that you're describing and those issues. So, for example, we are in a place now, or I guess you could say a state now, where people are more than ever, this is the good news, more than
Hmm.
ever, we hear people talking about just what you're talking about. We're hearing people talking about the importance of self-care more than ever, publicly talking about that. People do YouTube videos demonstrating what this
Hmm.
is my self-care, and people share with each other the things that they do to consciously take better care of themselves mentally, as well as physically and emotionally, spiritually, all of that. More than ever, we're hearing people talk about the health benefits and helpful benefits of seeking therapy if it's necessary. We hear people talking about yoga and deep breathing exercises and all kinds of things, with the idea that we want to take better care of ourselves, not just for ourselves, but also so that we can take better care of those around us. So that is part of the good news. And those things that we are sharing with each other, we're not using the word discipline necessarily, but they do have to do with discipline, because what are they doing but training ourselves to develop certain habits? So one of the things that I like to say can help combat those really uh, impulse reactions that you're describing, people who just drive and cut you off and all that, is if we encourage people to, you talked about being angry, so dealing with their anger in a way that is not lashing out at other people, but that self-talk, developing a practice and a disciplined practice of, and by discipline, I mean, like, it's a habit. It's something you develop every day. You work on it every day until it becomes part of you. So if you can, for yourself or others, encourage people to ask themselves a couple of questions. Well, how am I really feeling? First of all, how do I feel? That goes a long way. And then second of all, work on answering that question as honestly as you're able to. And oftentimes what happens is when we first answer that question, we only are hitting the surface. Because I know I've seen this, what we begin to notice is sometimes the first answer gets to the core of what the problem is. But oftentimes the first answer opens the door to the next answer. Like, for example, how am I feeling? Second part, you answer the question. Well, now that I think about it, and sometimes you have to take a minute to think about it. You know what? I'm feeling kind of nervous or scared, or I'm feeling kind of anxious. So after you ask, how do I feel? And then you try to answer it to the best that you can, emotionally, how are you feeling? Or physically, anything, I feel a little pain, whatever it is. Then you go on to the third step, which are the whys. Why? Now, all of this can send you on a journey in lots of different directions, which is fine, which is actually very good, because you're opening doors to get to the core of what's really going on so that you can get to the healing of what's really going on. So maybe I'm carrying around this irritation with me because now that I think about it, because answering the questions helps us to start thinking and remembering, and oh yeah, that's right. I never did get that straight with so and so or whatever. That little red wagon, that's what it is. I remember now. I remember now. Every time I see a red car, it makes me think about it. I want to cut that car off, or whatever it is. But there are lots of ways to navigate and try to get to the core of this. Sometimes we can't do it ourselves, and we may need to talk with others. It doesn't have to be a therapist per se. A therapist can be an excellent option. We definitely want people to feel comfortable seeking out. But if you have a trusted friend or coworker or spouse, whomever that you feel comfortable, sometimes maybe it just takes talking through some things a couple of times. Sometimes it may take longer and a longer journey, and maybe a more formal professional situation. But regardless, if we don't work on tapping into those emotions that we're carrying around, then we do get, just like you described, explosive and often dangerous, or sometimes dangerous situations. So those three things can be really helpful. Asking yourself, getting in the habit. Sometimes you forget. Sometimes we go back to old habits because we're used to reacting first, maybe without thinking. But like any discipline, we just kind of day by day just practice. Maybe sometimes it's good to write a note to remind yourself, put it on the mirror, put it on the refrigerator until it becomes a habit. Oh, wait, you know what? Okay, how am I feeling when you find yourself getting upset, or whatever the case? How do I feel? Try to answer it honestly. Sometimes it may take a little while, like, I'm not sure how I feel. Let me think about it. That's a great step. That second, that question of how do I feel, and then trying to answer it, the second step of trying to really answer it, because oftentimes you start to notice things just because you are trying to answer that question that you didn't notice before, maybe, because it causes you to stop or pause for a second and actually turn inward and really think for a second and listen to your body. Are there aches? Are there pains? Are there memories? Are there things sticking with you that you haven't shared that you need to address? So ask the question, how do you feel? Try to answer it. And then third step, why. Try to investigate. Well, let me see if I can uncover why. And that may take time, but sometimes may take a second, may take a while, but it's important, and it can help, again, tamp down those impulse reactions. And that's true whether it's eating, whatever it may be. It goes a long way.
Those are some great tips and some great things to remember. If someone is struggling with confidence, they don't have a lot of confidence, they don't have confidence in themselves, and I know we talked about impulse control, but some people, and I'm always amazed when I meet people who can be visibly and physically and mentally calm in the face of adversity. You know, those are the people who people say, "How are you so calm?" And they're just like, you know, I knew this person wasn't going to do anything to me. I knew I was protected by God in heaven, whatever it is. But there are some people that just exude, and I call it a strength because it's calmness. Because oftentimes, and I'm trying to teach this to my children, when people give you a reaction, you know, when they start coming at you, I said a lot of times it's issues that they're dealing with and they're telling you about themselves. So if they're accusing you of something, and you know, especially if somebody said you stole my red truck, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I just met you yesterday, so this happened in 1973. I'm sorry, I was not there. And you know, there are people who can remain calm in those situations where other people, you know, impulsively or angrily respond.
Yeah.
Is there something to discipline with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some people may not tell you this out loud because for some people, it's so second nature. It's so natural for them that they may not actually have thought about actually, being able to describe out loud, well, what is it that I do? But I would say 9 times out of 10 times out of 10, for many people who have that calm, there's an inner conversation that's going on. And I'm often telling people about that internal dialogue and the discipline of that dialogue. As someone who has worked on my own inner dialogue to change it so that I do not react as quickly as I once in a few younger days may have reacted. And for someone who has helped others also turn those corners, there is absolutely the internal, the self-talk, the internal dialogue that is a key part of the discipline of remaining calm. So what is that inner dialogue? You touched on it. If you say, people say, I knew that God would take care of me. For example, so they may know God is going to take care of them, and there's often, if not almost always, an internal dialogue. What does it sound like? Lord Jesus, I know you've got this. I know you're taking care of me. Thank you. There are prayers directly to the God that you feel is going to protect you. There's a conversation, there's a dialogue. Stay calm, talking to yourself. Stay calm. It'll be fine. Let this pass. You'll be all right. Those kinds of self-soothing statements, those kinds of soothing statements that we would say to a loved one who is alarmed or nervous or scared or feeling threatened, are the kinds of statements that we can say, and often I encourage should say to ourselves to help us stay calm. But just like the dance lessons, just like the music lessons, it takes practice. Just like writing, you are an artist.
Yes.
Who is an amazing writer. And
Thank
it
you.
takes practice. Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I tell people all the time. They say, "Oh, I should write a book." I say, "Go right ahead. You need to read, you need to take some classes, and you have to write."
You have to write.
Nothing that you write the very first time is going to come out perfect unless your name
Absolutely.
is Jesus. Unfortunately, it's not. So,
That's right.
that's not going to happen.
Exactly. And every time you correct a phrase or a sentence or try it, and it gets a little better, we're again with those neurons, the brain development, you're learning. You're creating new synapses, which are those connections between neurons in the brain. So yeah, anything that you practice positive or negative, healthy or detrimental, anything you do on a regular basis, daily, weekly, whatever, it's going to become part of you because that is a discipline. So this is the crux of developing and breaking and developing habits. If you are in the habit of drinking a bottle of vodka every Tuesday night after you get home from work, you can undo that. But
Yes.
it's going to take some practice. It's going to take some, changes in your physical environment, like maybe just like don't pass the liquor store, go to the other route on the way home. Some self-talk. I mean, it can take a whole variety of things. Everyone's different. But it's a similar path for developing habits, breaking habits, and for people. Now, we'll say this: there are some people for whom their personality, their traits that they're born with, they may be naturally calmer than other people. Some people are naturally more excited. Some people are exciting, in terms of their reactions to the world. Some people are calmer. And so for the person who may naturally kind of be calmer, they may not have to work at that quite so diligently. They may have other things that they need to work on. But even for the person for whom it comes a little more naturally, they may or may not still have that some aspect of that inner dialogue. So yeah, I use the prayerfulness internally as an example. Whatever it may be, that inner conversation. Sometimes the inner conversation really is mainly about not so much convincing yourself, can be about convincing yourself, can be about reminding yourself, don't panic. It can be about what was I going to say? No, it's similar to reminding, but it's like it's really a reiteration. But I guess it is a reminding. It's like reminding yourself. I was actually thinking of something along the lines of a mantra, something that you say to yourself in certain situations to relax. So it can be things like, they can be the physical aspects that lead to the psychological and emotional calming. So physical things that work hand in hand with that are like, take a deep breath. Okay, exhale slowly, that kind of thing, just relax into your, things that we say, or may work on saying, they may not come naturally. So we have to practice it. So it's a discipline or reaction. And then you try to put it into practice in your day-to-day life when certain situations come up. And when you find that doesn't work, you just continue to practice until it does. And it can take you a long way. It can be the difference. We know it could be the difference between life and death sometimes, not panicking. I was just talking with someone about swimming. It's one of my music students. He's an excellent swimmer, just like my dad was, and he teaches swimming, and he swims, every day. And we were talking about that, and we were talking about, the importance of not panicking when you're in the water, and that can be the difference between life and death, and in so many situations. So.
And that is a good reminder. And it reminds me of a saying, and I'm going to butcher this saying because I don't quite remember exactly, but it says, always look for the rainbow above the clouds. So whenever you are in a situation and it seems all hope is lost, there's always a silver lining. There's always a rainbow, which is the hope that this will pass, this too shall pass, this will pass, and that things will get better. Brighter days are on the horizon. The Bible says weeping endureth for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And so, we know that there's a time and a season where you may be sad and down, but then there's a time you're going to come back up. It's just sort of the cycle of how things work. And I think that is important to remember that in terms of discipline, that we really have to work on our inner dialogue. How do we talk to ourselves? How do we encourage ourselves? What are the things that we say that we feed into ourselves so that we can have that discipline and those healthy habits, and that we can become and portray ourselves in a way that's not only beneficial for us, but also beneficial for the interactions that we have with other people.
Absolutely. And I love that you said feed into ourselves. It is so important. Doing it during times when you're not feeling particularly challenged it will help, it's like, again, like the scripture says, that building up the armor, so that it's in place. Whatever you practice is likely what you're going to do, generally speaking. So if you tend, even in the little things day by day, if you stub your toe and you're used to reacting by cussing up a blue streak and calling yourself stupid, oh man, that's it's more likely, we won't say guarantee across the board, because situations differ and people differ, but it's more likely that that's the kind of negative reaction and attack you're going to have on yourself and on others when situations come up. But if you practice, I'll be okay, I'll be all right, I have this I have this well, I have a few stories. I am a very expressive person, as you know. People who watch your podcast regularly know that my hands are forever flying because I speak with my hands. They're forever flying. So I'm very I'm a naturally like up sunny kind of person, and I'm very excited about life and stuff. I have my down times for sure, absolutely. But I'm famous in my family. I am forever. I'm not clumsy with other people's stuff at all. Like, I don't drop things. I can take care of the finest of china, none of those things. But I am just forever harming myself unintentionally.
I do that. I walk in the walls all the time. I said the wall walks into
Thank
me.
you. Literally, you understand. We understand.
Yes.
So it was I earlier this year, I was actually had a performance coming up. It was in March. I had a performance earlier this year. And days before, I was at the gas station. I was at the gas station, and I was putting the gas in. Now, it was rainy and cold. It was not a pretty evening, And I realized that I put the nozzle into my gas tank and chose the wrong one. I want to choose super, the premium. I chose regular. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go back inside and ask the lady to change that for me. And so while the nozzle was plugged into my car, I was stepping over that cord, over the cord thing.
The hose, yes.
The hose, thank you. I did not clear it. And so, as is my way, I'm not going to fall into some bed of feathers. No, that's not what's going to happen. So I didn't clear, and I went down, and there was nothing for me to grab.
Oh, wow.
And so it was concrete. God, I was so blessed and taking care of that area. I'm so thankful. It was concrete. And with the rain and everything, there was only one puddle. And of course,
that's the one that you fell in, and you were just like,
of course. I mean, I had my glasses were relatively new, and it was face first. So I'm going down knowing that it was just going to be nothing but concrete. It happened very fast, and I yelled, Jesus, yelled down. And I didn't bust my glasses, but I know my face hit the concrete, so the glass was pushed against my eye, and I heard something crash. So my first thought was making sure no glass went into my skin, which it didn't. Nothing was. I was very blessed. Yeah. But while I was down there, because of a lifelong habit, and because of the way I was raised and trained by mom and grandma and daddy and great aunt Viola and all those, I was down there for 2 seconds, and my first thought was, well, I'm splat. And picture it, everyone, face down. My first thought was, because I could feel the bump rising on my face, because I did give myself a black eye. Am I okay? The first thought was, am I okay? And then I started laughing. I started giggling because I said, Satan thinks he's funny. That's all right. That's all right, Lord. We just gonna wait a minute. And I remained, make sure I could move. Nothing was broke, etc. Got up and, wobbled in there with wet, the whole front wet, big bubble. And the lady in the gas station said, oh, but what happened? Who won the fight? She's like, what? And I was just laughing. I said that the Satan thinks he's funny. I said, I felt y'all. So she was so sweet. She's like, all right, let me get you some ice. So everything worked out fine. Okay. And the black eye wasn't so bad that, we were able to make it work with a little makeup for the performance. Could have been so much worse. But as scientists in the medical profession and psychologists and folks now understand what our old folks and our ancient folks from many cultures have understood forever. What we now, not we, but the scientific community now understands, is
Mm-hmm.
that if you think more positively,
Mm-hmm.
why is that healing? We know it's healing. We have seen it be a healer. It makes all the difference in how you recover, how you will bounce back. Even when you're going through pain, the greater we now, we know that there's a greater likelihood of survival and resilience if mentally we practice a discipline of, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Positive, keep going. So now the scientific community, when someone is suffering from a catastrophic illness or cancer or something like that, in the ER, and we have doctors now saying that they understand that if you stay positive, because it literally does make a huge difference. And that does take, again, some people's personality is
Mm-hmm.
naturally kind of more positive, but even for folks like that, it's still a day-to-day, week-to-week, like a way of living that you practice. Doesn't mean you're gonna be perfect and tiptoe through the tulips at all times, but it's very helpful, and it really builds mentally in that brain. It's like any other habit. It becomes a reflex, like a reflex. It becomes a reflexive habit to look to the positive rather than the negative when you really work on it. And you will not, well, not you will not, but you're less likely to find those answers if you don't look for them. And you're less likely to look for them if you have a negative attitude that says, well, it's not going to make any difference anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one other thing I want to add too, you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
feeding to ourselves, which of course, like we're talking about, is so important. And then also, what I have found extremely helpful is calling on mentally in those times. You were talking about, like, not wanting to work out, and good gracious, we understand. we understand those moments and those days. And I know for myself, there's the self-encouragement, do it anyway, come on, calling on
Mm-hmm.
the Lord help me. And in addition to that are others who have fed into us, others in your life who have positive things to say. Oh my goodness, it can be such food and such an anchor in those times when those words come back, and we
Mm-hmm.
remember those words and dwell, spend some time dwelling on them so that they will come back in those times when, whatever it may be, you're challenged and you don't feel like moving or whatever. And I can hear people saying, I can hear my husband saying, it's usually hardest when you're about to make that next level. You're
Yes.
almost there, keep going,
Mm-hmm.
same thing my mom would say. And hearing those things, so we feed into ourselves and seek out and accept positive things that other people feed into us. All of that contributes to that daily discipline habit of looking for the positive and greater resilience.
Excellent, Dr. Angie. Excellent way to end our podcast. But before we get out of here, tell us how we can find you, how people can follow you, and how we can reach you,
Thank you.
and what you have coming up also.
Thank you for that. You can reach me on Instagram, Facebook. I have 2 Facebook pages. I have my Angela Celeste May, which my name is at the bottom of the screen there, and then there's also Dr. Angela Celeste May, both Facebook. The doctor is that's my music Facebook page, where I share my upcoming performances and things like that. You can find me on YouTube as well, Angela Celeste May. I already said Instagram, Facebook, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Dr. Angela Celeste May. So you can find me at all those places. If you're interested in the music part of what I do in terms of booking me for any performances and things like that, I am a vocalist primarily, first and foremost, and I put different bands and groups together. So I'm a band leader. I also am a flutist, and I play violin and viola with the Violin Divas, and I teach piano as well. So if you would like to reach me for booking for performance or for music lessons, you can do that either by sending me a message on Instagram or the Dr. Angela Celeste May Facebook. You could also email me at CELESTE, which is Celeste, and then MU, which is short for music, and the number 1 at AOL.com. So yeah, that's for music stuff. You could also go to my reverbnation.com / Angela Celeste May as well for more music related information. You also can reach me with my sister via our company, which is A.M. May and Associates Incorporated. My sister is Michelle May. She's the M in A.M. May. We are a counseling, consulting, and coaching company. So if you are interested in any of those, I do doctoral coaching. We both do personal and professional and creative coaching because we're both musicians as well. And I do consulting. So you can go to amassociates.com for our website. You can also go to our Instagram, AMA Associates on Instagram as well. So feel free. You can find us in all those places. My book, which is Freedom: What is the Experience of Living Without Negative Self-Imposed Limitations? It's all about resilience. It was my master's thesis that I was very encouraged by many people to publish. So it's very readable. Very, 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 very readable. You can get this on Amazon. You can get my CDs from Reverb Nation and from iTunes as well. And what do I have coming up? I have a performance that was going to be in November. I was booked to perform some original songs of another composer and lyricist, and to do a kind of a real nice little Broadway-ish kind of thing coming up. It's a really fascinating story. It is based on the real life story of veterans during World War I, Black vets during World War I. And there was a group of musicians that were overseas. You know, we know our Black vets go overseas and fight, oftentimes find greater respect in, especially back in the day, in certain European and other countries than they may have found during the racially restrictive times in our country in those earlier years. So it's not a full play. It's more reading passages and then the music and passages and music. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's excellent. It's like I said, the real life story of Black vets during World War I who were celebrated, and the music that they did and the heroism of these folks. So it has been pushed to February. Hasn't been fully announced yet because they're working out dates, but February during Black History Month, at the Aretha Franklin Cafe here in Detroit at the Music Hall.
Nice.
So that should be taking place coming up. If you are in the Detroit or Metro Detroit area, the Violin Divas, we should be playing again. We've played every year for like the past 12 years, I think, at our famous Noel night in Detroit. It's wonderful, wonderful evening. It's always the first Saturday in December. So that'll be really great. We can, I think I should have the actual location of where we'll be doing it, because Noel night takes up, the whole cultural area. So those things are coming up, and I'm teaching, and that's all I can think of at the moment. There's always stuff. I may be speaking in DC in February. I'll find that out as well. So that's what I've got going on at the moment. Thank you.
Excellent, Dr. Angie. We know you are super busy because you are in demand. You always provide wonderful wisdom and great counsel.
Thank
so
you.
We appreciate you being here with another fabulous topic. We can't wait till you join us again next month with another wonderful topic.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. You can find me everywhere on social media: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Well, yes, TikTok. I was going to say Twitter. It's right. X, but yeah, X. That place called Twitter. TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, everywhere on social media as Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can see this show at youtube.com / Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can learn more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. And I hope that you'll join us on our next episode. And we look forward to seeing you then. And as always, remember, be magnificent.